So first things first, Jeff, like, can you like introduce yourself for the audience?
Sure. Jeff Petersmeyer. I'm in my first year at USC as the jumps and multis coach after a brief hiatus from college track and field coaching. Before here, I was the athletic director at a university in Kuwait City, which was a great experience watching my coaches in futsal, which I knew nothing about, and soccer. We started the programs there, women's volleyball. It was just a great experience living in the Middle East. Before that, I was at the University of Louisville for 4.5 years. Fortunate enough to coach many great athletes and post collegiates there. Helped out with men's basketball with Adam Patway and the strength development staff at the University of Louisville, which was approximately from September to January when I went to Kuwait. And I've had various stops around TCU in Fort Worth, Boise State. I was the head coach at San Jose State University. And when I was a young buck, I started at Northern Arizona as a graduate assistant for Ron Mann, who later became the Louisville head coach. And I was at Columbia University in New York City. So I've lived in a lot of places. Yeah.
Nice. Is there any certain place you enjoy the most?
Well, New York was great because I'm a pizza freak. I love New York City pizza. But I just thought we were pretty heavily focused on the distance, which, that was fine. That we were really good. Coach Wood had them rolling in the distances there, but I was like, I probably need to move on to help my resume and go someplace that focuses more like TCU on speed and jump events. But
Cool.
yeah, New York City was great. The Metroplex, Dallas Fort Worth, it's like my second home, so I really love that too. Working with Coach Daryl Anderson was awesome. Great opportunity.
Nice. So, how about pizza in Louisville? Is it good? Because I'm moving over there.
It's mid. It's mid. The best pizza place left. That's me. I make the best pizza in Louisville. Ask Gio. He's from Italy, and he said it was the best. Um, but it's hard to say a chain pizza place is the best pizza in Louisville. But Jets Pizza, if you've ever had Detroit style pizza, awesome. Yeah.
Probably one day, probably someday
But
in
it's
the
the
future.
hometown of Papa John's, so you can't forget that. And
Okay.
Pellizzari's. So there's some decent pizza, but the best place closed and moved to Los Angeles.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So, since you like went to a lot of like places to teach speed and to teach like jumping, can you like um give us some thoughts about like if it's like for a basketball player you mentioned, how would you program their plyo
For who? I'm sorry, cut out a little
or
bit there.
like basketball players?
Oh gosh, I wouldn't be qualified to answer that. What was fun about that was when I first started with Adam, we brought over two 7 foot plus high jumpers, and we kind of took them through some of the plyometrics that are very specific to like curve mechanics and taking off a single foot, right? Not double foot in the high jump. And one of them caught on really well, and one of them didn't. But the whole time I was just worried that one of them was going to get hurt and it was going to be my fault. So I think there's a lot of similarities there, but I wouldn't be qualified like Adam to tell you when to do what they do. But man, they jump a lot every practice, regardless of doing hurdle hops or whatever it might be. Whereas we can kind of in the track world, right? We're going to do 5 sets of 5 hurdle hops, and then we're going to do this. We're done bounding. It's not a game, so it's a little bit different. Yeah.
Cool. So how about like when you like teach jumpers, how would you program it?
Yeah, it kind of varies by the jump coach that you ask. One of my best friends is a high school coach in Idaho, and he thinks I don't bound enough. And I look at some coaches programming, and I think they bound too much, right? So it's about finding that perfect balance for your program. And when I was younger, I was twice a week bounding, and then now it just depends on the time of the year, the athlete, uh, and a lot of them will start with skipping progressions, and it's amazing. This is my 28th year or 27th year. How badly the kids out of high school skip now. So just coordination enhancement, skipping, and then progressing into your more complex bounding drills. And then they become a little bit more specific, be it a multi-event athlete, a long jumper, triple jumper, high jumper, and like I said before, doing stuff on the curve, maybe a run jump on the curve, or single leg hops to a penultimate to a takeoff. So they can get a little bit more explosive, like depth jumps, drop jumps. There's a whole plethora of menu items that we can go through, and it just varies general prep, specific prep, when we're doing these things and how often.
You mentioned that kids out of high school, they're bad at like doing skip it. Is these kids trained track?
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's everybody wants to blame like specialization or what, but and maybe I couldn't skip either. But I just remember when I first started coaching, it was a lot easier to teach them to skip than it is now. Maybe it's emasculating for some of the guys to skip. I don't know, but I don't know why that is.
So
Maybe
after
maybe it's lack of PE classes in high school. I don't.
so uh like after like working with Adam, do you think that basketball athletes should like put like skipping and bounding into their warm up?
He does skip a lot. They do skip a lot. He has a drill called Skipioka. I mean, I've learned so much from Adam. It's great, and I think there's things that you're going to see that can transfer to any sport. Yeah, but that when they were doing a lot of the skipping is when I was pulling my phone out and recording, and I have a pretty good eye for track, but some of the movements they were doing were unique to me, and I hate slow motion. I hate recording in slow motion, but I was recording in slow motion, going, dang, look at this guy's foot, how inverted or everted it was, and I was like, he's going to break his ankle, because they're bigger guys too. So yeah, no, Adam does a lot of skipping in his programming.
Nice. So for like for like jumping, um is there like do you do like force plate testing or like for your like jumpers?
I've no, but this year, yes. Just met with Antonio this past weekend, a well-renowned Italian biomechanist here at USC who wrote the programming for the 100-meter gold medalist in Tokyo. And I have to pass this up with my boss, Quincy Watts, our head coach here. But we have that technology here. Tatiana, our strength coach, definitely want to implement that there. And I saw Adam and Gio doing quite a bit of that at Louisville. So certainly uh, we're going to get involved a little bit more in that.
So before like before before you heading to the USC, why don't you use like force split before?
Honestly, intellectual laziness, perhaps, or when I wasn't writing the weight room as much as I'm going to be doing now. We had a great strength coach, Sean. He was awesome, and um, I'm not sure. He had several different sports. He was with volleyball, and so a lot of times time is a factor. Time, we don't have the time to do everything we want to do. One of my post collegiates, who's now in Houston, Shelby McEwen, who won the high jump for at the USA Championships last year, got fifth in the world, jumped 233. He went over with Adam, and you'll see he got on the force plate a little bit and did some work there, and so that's kind of opened my eyes to let's get some of that going here when we
Nice.
have the resources, and I think that's a lot. We have the resources to do stuff like that.
Nice. So since you don't like use force weight that much before, how do you like uh how do you like make sure what athlete need like what type of like strength training, or like they need to bound more, they need to like sprint more?
Well, that's going to be one tool to help, right? But training isn't always what you write, it's what you watch. And a lot of it I watch on the track. I have metrics, bounding metrics, such as a lateral bench hop, 20-second lateral bench hop that my mentor, Ed Jacoby, implements. And I know I have all these years of data in different, just like a lot of good coaches, in metrics of bounding and and assessments that I do. And based on that, and all the years back from 1999 when I started college coaching, or 98 actually, to now, and I can kind of, benchmark these guys and kind of see, okay, Shelby did 42 lateral bench hops in 20 seconds. That's awesome. Um, this guy does 28. We need to work on this a little bit, but it's not always about focusing on their limitations. As far as that goes, we also focus on their strengths a little bit too. So don't want to always just look at their limitations.
Cool. So I also noticed that you use like 1080 sprint for the jumpers in Louisville. Am I right?
Yeah, I used a little bit, but not enough. Not enough. And again, time was. I love the 1080. I'm not going to say anything bad about the 1080. The the Clippers coach was telling us about the new 1080, and it looks even more portable. And that's. I was just talking to Coach Watts about that yesterday. We were excited about that. But having managers and student managers and graduate assistants and things like that at the elite level, a couple of my friends are like, "You're an idiot if you're not using the 1080." And okay, well, it's easier to when you have 8 hours in the beginning of the season per NCAA rules to get 3 or 4 sled poles, lines of sled poles, than it is to tie everybody up to the 1080, get the computer out, set it up, and then try to be done with practice in 90 minutes, or you're in trouble with your care logs. So yes, I would like to use that. So and obviously all the data that comes along with that, for sure.
So I want to dive a little bit deeper into this. Since it's like jumpers, why do you think that no matter it's a long jump or like high jump, they need to like implement resisted sprinting into their programming?
Well, I typically in the general and specific prep try to couple. If I'm doing one acceleration day on a flat, I'll try to do a resistance a day as well. And my mentor Ed Jacoby would do hill work, for example, once every 10 days. So I think there's difference of resistance work. You have something like the 1080. You have stadium runs. You have stadium hops, remediation works sometimes up stadiums, and sometimes it's as simple as not just pulling a sled, but running into a headwind. When I was the head coach at San Jose State, we didn't have anything, and we were practicing on tennis courts inside of a 60-meter cage. We called it the cage, and so we couldn't do anything. So some days we were just running into a headwind. So, but you don't want to do that, at least in my opinion. I don't want to do that during the competitive season, be slow. But when we're trying to complement things we're doing in the weight room, or doing things vertical in nature in our bounding, um, then yeah, we're going to do some resistant work for those strength improvements. Yeah. Sometimes it's even doing runways into the wind, because, I have this, getting off into a tangent on long jump runways, but how to determine when things could not go your way. And I have a scale of 1 to 7. 1 to 7, what's the likelihood that you're going to run into a headwind at the meet in a long jump? Uh, in the college level, maybe it's a 2. Sometimes the winds change, right? Okay, how bad would that be on a scale 1 to 7? 7 being it's a complete disaster. 5, okay, it's not a disaster, but nobody wants to jump into a headwind. So then you take 2 times 5, 10, right? 10 out of 100. So 10% of our runway work we do into a headwind. And so that's how we decide. Sorry, it's loud out there. That's how we decide how to do some resistance work on technical days.
Nice, nice, nice. So, you mentioned that there's like you also implement like stadium run or like stadium hop. So, for uh, I think stadium run or stadium hop is mainly during off season. Am I right?
Yeah, mostly. Yeah, because it's not as fast as we want. During the season, we're gonna do plyometrics that are probably a little bit faster with a little bit less resistance.
So, can you like give us an example about like during the off season, maybe how would you program one session of like stadium run and stadium hop?
Um, Well, it's kind of like what's your theme of the day, right? Kind of like what Boo would talk about a lot. So if our theme of the day is resistance work by jumping vertically upstairs, we might run upstairs on the same day. We might do vertical hops to complement that afterwards, maybe some hurdle hops or some drop jumps or some eccentric overload training on those days as well. But yeah, in the fall we're going to work on not just jumping vertically, but also, especially with our high jumpers, timing up our limbs to work together, where we're really emphasizing the blocking action of the double arm for the high jumpers, whether it be a single leg hop or a double leg hop, and then also downhill stadium hops, downhill stadium hops, just to catch that weight.
It's more like you mentioned eccentric training, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's going to just help our in the horizontals, for example. That's just going to help our vertical velocity off the board as well. You have your horizontal velocity getting faster, sprinting, and that's going to help us in our vertical velocity component.
Nice. So for um for jumpers, no matter it's like long jump, high jump, or for even for team sport athlete, if they want to jump higher, they probably need to focus more on like improving their takeoff velocity. So what would what are your thoughts on like how to like program athletes like takeoff velocity?
Well, when you think about takeoff velocity, I think several things come to my mind first. One, it's your fastest controllable speed, right? And I think when you look at young kids and they just take off right away out of the back, ding, 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 they don't really have that acceleration progression that you want to teach them. So they're probably fastest right in the beginning and then slow at takeoff, right? Some people have too long of approach or too short of approach. So finding that optimal distance, and I do it the old school way. I time the last 4 steps. If a kid wants to have 9 rights and I have him at 8, all right, let's try it. We'll do it on the track or on the runway. And the proof's in the pudding. AccuPete never lies on my stopwatch, and we can find what that optimal distance is to have improved speed at takeoff. But the other thing is like I said, other than teaching proper acceleration progression on the run, is those last 2 to 3 steps for, let's say, a long jump, working to improve the technique at takeoff, having a good penultimate step that's not gearing on that penultimate step, as Dan would say, or braking, but having a flat foot and a quick low heel recovery takeoff step, because you're going to slow down from, the elites, be it like 10.5 meters per second, that third step out. And you want to try to keep that as close to 10 meters per second or so, for example, as you can. And I think that's one way, just, having a long takeoff step or slowing down all the way through, or braking on your penultimate or braking on the last 2 steps, are certainly things that we want to avoid. So correct technique there.
Cool. Because I came out of like strength and conditioning or like performance, I is like the penultimate step is it like braking?
Well, it can be. It's just by definition, your next to last step, your penultimate step. And so I'm of the school that a flat rolling uh, slight heel first contact, to lower your hips. Before you raise your hips, you must first lower your hips. But then that last step, so that's the longest step of your approach by definition. But then one of your shortest steps, if not your shortest step, would then be your takeoff step, which would have a low heel recovery, quick off the ground. Because the longer that one is, the more you're sinking, right? So just want to maintain your horizontal velocity as best you can and attack the board.
So, for like, what if it's for like basketball player? They also need to like run some like I forgot the name, but they need to dunk the ball. They need to like lay up. Is it kind of same mechanic?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of times you see them with the ball. I grew up a big North Carolina fan, North Carolina Tar Heels, and you'd see Dean Smith teach them. And this is a little bit different, but excuse me, Pepsi Max, get the rebound and bring the ball all the way down, and then somebody slaps the ball out of their hand because it's so low. And you see a lot of them do that when they're going in for a layup, and it's just, I don't know if it's fatigue or just, but you'll see their last two steps just so far out in front of them, boom, boom, and they'll gather, and sometimes that ball's swatted out. I mean, sometimes it's not, and they dunk it. But I mean, I think when you see these other guys just with really good posture, a couple guys come to my mind at Louisville that just were beautiful on their last couple steps, going in for a dunk or a layup. And there's definitely uh, variations through the roster of who does it better than others. And then that's the track coach in me when I'm at basketball practice going, ooh, why is his shoulder so far over his center of mass? His hips are back here, like that's not a very good takeoff. He went from being 6'11" to 6'2". Why? So
Um, I love you bring up this like uh the athlete like sing a little or like sing a lot, especially when it comes like no matter it's like basketball player or like uh I think volleyball player also sing a lot, but as a track coach or as a jumping coach, do you think that kind of mechanic, because Adam invite you and a lot of like track coach to Louisville basketball to help. So do you think that also transfer to like basketball? I mean the skill of like jumping.
yeah, I mean, I think it transfers to all sports. I mean, you mentioned volleyball. They're taking off a lot of times on double support, 2 feet. So their arms are way back. It's like doing a standing vertical test, right? We don't do that in track. Long jump, triple jump, high jump, pole vault, all off one leg, right? So they can spend a little bit more time on the ground. They're not getting timed, like they're not slowing down their horizontal velocity maybe as much as a long jumper or a guy going in on a fast break for a dunk. So, but yeah, it's jumping's jumping.
Cool. But do you think that the reason probably some athletes sinks and some athletes don't sinks is probably because like the way the way that the muscle like contracts is different. Some athletes are able to like probably get the isometric contraction and probably be more elastic, but some athletes need the probably like some like triple extension, that kind of stuff.
I'm sure, but I love the phrase "it's never one thing," right? So I'm sure, yes, but also how many, not to knock any other sport, but how many talk about this like we are now? So technically, have they been instructed to do what we're talking about? And so that's one thing that I was really impressed when I went to basketball practice with Adam. Yeah, they talk about it, and it's interesting.
So like you mentioned that probably some of the athlete, especially like basketball athlete, they sink. Personally, do you think that is a thing to like correct?
I think we're getting out of my realm of expertise in another sport, but um, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can always improve that. I mean, we're working every day to improve that on our athletes that we do instruct already. So I'm sure there's a lot of people working on that now, and maybe some that aren't, but I wouldn't know.
Cool, cool, cool. So I'm gonna go back to like jumping. So how exactly, like you mentioned, you probably work with your athlete to improve that like every day. So can you give us some like example about like how would you like improve that like sync or not sync?
In what event are we talking? Like just
Jumping.
jumping, improve
Long jump.
long jump. I mean, we do a lot of full speed approach work where we're working on, um, our theme of that day might be getting off our penultimate or running through our penultimate and having a good pop up, and so 90% of our jump in the long jump is determined at takeoff. So we work so much on the ground, and the kids, they just want you to see them jump in the air, and sometimes it looks great and it's not very far. Sometimes it looks terrible and it is very far. But I'm always watching the last two steps. So when we're working and we're talking about enhanced coordination abilities, a lot of what we're talking about is done at a very fast rate of speed. And so we have to progress our teaching to kind of match that. And so doing full runways, we do them every week. Sometimes we do them twice a week, but most of the time we just do them on Wednesdays. In the off season, we'll do them a little bit more. But teaching things as simple as pop ups, you'd be surprised at how bad some of our high school kids coming out of high school are their freshman year at just pop ups. And so these are things that can make a big difference, especially at full speed when they're coming in and they're collapsing on the board, or a lot of them have no idea to set up that penultimate whatsoever. So some of them are over gathering, getting a little too low, especially in the triple jump where they're really dipping and gathering and they're going too high on their hop and then collapsing in their step. The same is true in the long jump to a different degree, where some of them are really gathering and some of them have no idea and they're just running right off the board and not getting any kind of impulse that you want at takeoff.
Cool. So you mentioned before like the layup or like the dunk is more like high jump instead of like uh long jump. So what exactly is the difference? Because I came out like I haven't trained like any long jump or like high jump athlete before. So what exactly is it different? Is the difference?
Difference between what?
Long jump and high jump.
Oh, there's a lot of difference. I mean, the knee angle at takeoff, the body positioning at takeoff. The high jump, we're coming in on a curve where, it's a lot different. It's a much longer approach. You might be on the ground a lot longer in the high jump, and even in the triple jump, the horizontal velocity is three times more important if you talk to Tom Telez than the long jump, two times as important. So they're all different, right? Even the pole vault. But I think the biggest difference in the high jump is obviously we're turning our back to the bar. So we got this shoulder and hip separation going on. Our arms are coming out for the double arm takeoff. So there's a lot. We're working in a circular manner or in a J in the high jump. So it's quite different. It's quite unique. The last step, is you it's a lot different. Yeah.
So
And that's why you see some really good long jumpers having trouble converting horizontal to vertical. They just can't do it.
so in order to like improve like the pop-up you mentioned or like the penultimate step, do you work on do you think it's probably getting athlete like stronger in their like probably squatting or like deadlift gonna be a help for like transfer that?
I don't know if that would really transfer. I think um, connecting this to what we're doing down there with our feet and is a big teaching technique. There's a lot of guys that never lifted a weight in their life that are really good at taking off naturally. When you look at kids doing penultimate steps, I think just teaching them the correct way to do it, probably more of a transfer than anything you're going to do as far as a deadlift or something like that, or a squat.
So probably just like you did, letting the athlete to like sprint and try to jump, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some kids that are just going to be very natural and understand what you're trying to do right away, and then there's going to be some some challenges with some of the others that might not have the best. Um, um, they might not be as coachable, not because they don't want to be, but they just don't understand. But it's not that hard. Once they you take them through a few things, they can do it. A lot of times they just for whatever reason don't on a certain jump, or they forget, or you know something happens, they chop, they have to reach for the board, so you have steering things going on now. Certainly we're always talking about it in the high jump. The most important part of the high jump is loading the leg, so working that penultimate and having vertical shin angles in the high jump with the penultimate is just highly important, just as important as posture, and there's a whole lot of important things, right?
Yeah. So for 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 jumpers or like for long jump and high jump, especially like I think especially for long jump, because like Jacob Marcel is long jump, like he he's first long jump and then run 100 meters at second. Am I right?
Is that the Italian guy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Is Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I think he's pretty good at the 100.
But why do you think that, or why is it like jumping helps like running faster?
When I coached at TCU, there was a Jamaican group of post collegians there, and they bounded more than I've ever bounded in a week. They bounded alternate leg bounds on the grass for hours. I would be done with practice and leave, and they would still be out there bounding. Um, I know Ed Jacoby, my mentor, wrote a piece that said there's a lot of gains in, and a lot of coaches will say this, but a lot of gains in speed bounding. We do a little run in, we do 30-meter speed bounding for time. Again, these go back to the metrics I was talking about in the beginning. Speed bounds for time can really develop those fast twitch muscle fibers, sometimes even better than sprinting can. And so there's a lot to be said about bounding.
Speed rounding.
But Coach Lloyd in Fort Worth does a lot of bounding with his post collegiate group.
Like a lot is like how many like for a session?
Man, I don't know, but they're bounding all day. I mean, I saw them. This is back in '09. They were bounding more than they were running, and they were healthy. They ran fast.
They're bounding then more than they were running. That's interesting. So if if it's like uh you're gonna like run or you're gonna write the weight room program for your jumpers for like long jump and high jump, do you like uh would you, or like how strong would you let them be? How heavy would you squat them?
Well, that's always the question, right? And I think depending on who you ask, I think at a certain point, I'm of the belief that if they're squatting, especially older athletes, if they're squatting 400 pounds, or whoever it might be, if if you have to keep squatting them to get little gains of absolute strength, I think it's best that you just reduce the absolute strength in the weight room for those athletes and focus on other qualities, right? Whereas your developmental athletes might be squatting a little bit longer, so they can handle some of the pounding and the triple jumpers that catch a lot more than their body weight off the hop. So it just depends on the level of athlete and the stage of their career. But yeah,
Nice.
taxing the central nervous system by doing heavy, slow, coordinative, destroying squats, I probably will start steering away from that. And I'm. It's funny you asked that because I coach Roderick Townsend, who's the Paralympic gold medalist, and he just broke the world record in Paris a couple weeks ago in the high jump, T46 or T47 high jump, and he's what 30, 31 now, and he's getting to the point. He's 6'7", he's 211 pounds. How much more is he going to be able to squat? And so, programming changes every year, of course, but now maybe we squat very little going forward. He's getting of age where, I want to start veering away from that a little bit. So
Nice, nice. I'm sorry that it kind of like went all over the place for this podcast,
oh no, this has been fun.
but I personally learned a lot, man.
Well, I'm not an advanced biomechanist like some of the guys I hang out with and I learn a lot from, like Boo and Adam, and but I'm always learning, so no, it's great.
Man, I learned a lot. I mean, I did a lot of podcasts with like performance coaches or like track coaches, and also like jump for coaches, they coach jump, and they don't really bring a lot of like they don't really talk a lot about like the penultimate step. You are probably the coach that brings this up the most.
Well, I learned some from Dan Paff one time. My friend Brian and I were out at Altus in 2016, and and Brian, he knew, but 20 some years in coaching, I never even thought of it. They just had a little tiny piece of tape down there, and it was like, I always tell people, when in doubt, go with the base rate, right? When in doubt, go with the base rate. And that piece of tape was the base rate. That's where most people would have their penultimate step. So if they were over that, their takeoff step was probably going to be too short. If they're behind it, they're reaching for the board. And, some of these little rules of thumbs or heuristics, to this day, I'm learning, and I'm like, oh man, like, so, little things like that, working on the penultimate step, I've learned along the way, and it's paid dividends.
Last question, okay, last question before I let you go.
Mm-hmm.
I know I send you the list about like force velocity curve, and for like jumping or like sprinting or like speed jump, well, sorry, speed hop or like distance hop, and the ground reaction time or the ground contact time is like so little, so fast. How exactly can they like produce that amount of force in like so little time?
Well, I think this one is probably more of a strength and conditioning profile or measurement than what I do out on the track. But I think, to answer your question, every athlete is a little unique in their qualities. Like, I have uh, um, a high jumper that jumps 233 that's super skinny, super tall. He's off the ground real quick. But then I have a guy who's almost as talented or just as talented. He's just younger, jumping over 8 meters in the long jump. And he's not dynamic in that sense whatsoever. So we just want to push that force, that curve to the right as best we can. But these are things that, you don't know everything, or at least I don't. And I don't have an ego. So when I don't know, I call. And I've been blessed to have people that, especially in the strength and conditioning realm, I took Boo's class. Is fantastic. Dan Paff taught me so much in the weight room, doesn't even know it. Stu McMillan, same. Jason Hetler, who's at Altus, now down at IMG, fantastic. And then even coaches in the NCAA like Petros at Illinois, doing so much of his stuff in the weight room has really helped my development as well. So that's kind of how I work in the weight room, is reaching out to those folks. And recently Adam, just picking Adam's brain has just been so awesome. And I'm excited for you to learn with him there at Louisville.
Yeah, man, I'm so excited. So, for those who are interested in what we're talking about today, where can they reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Well, anywhere, right? I'm at USC. You can find me on the website there. I don't tweet a lot, but I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I have two Instagrams. I have the work one, coach_petersmeyer. And then I have the fun one where you're going to see Pepsi Max, pizza, Tokyo, Paris, Thailand pictures, hurdles 52. I don't even know my Twitter handle. It's like AccuPete or something, but that could be my PlayStation account too. If you want to play some Call of Duty, right?
I think I'm on the Pepsi and pizza one.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. There's a lot of there's a pizza that Adam Antonio, the biomechanist here at USC, told us to go to in Long Beach. So a lot of that too. Yeah.
Cool, cool. Appreciate that.